For over 1,000 years, one of the brightest stars in our night sky has been keeping a secret. It flickers, it dims, it brightens again, on a strange, repeating cycle nobody could fully explain. Ancient stargazers noticed it. Modern astronomers studied it for decades. And still the true cause stayed hidden, buried in light that had to travel 600 years just to reach our eyes. Then, using some of the most powerful telescopes ever built, scientists finally caught the culprit in the act. What they found wasn't just an explanation, Betelgeuse. It was something almost nobody expected to ever actually see. So what exactly is hiding beside this giant dying star? Why did it take modern astronomy over a century to catch it? And what does this discovery tell us about the final chapter of one of the most famous stars in the galaxy? Stick with this story until the end, because the real breakthrough is even stranger than the headlines you may have already seen. Here's why this topic matters right now. Betelgeuse isn't just any star. It's one of the closest red supergiants to Earth. Visible to the naked eye from almost anywhere on the planet, and it's widely believed to be nearing the end of its life. Every new discovery about its behavior brings scientists one step closer to understanding exactly what happens when a star this massive finally runs out of fuel. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what astronomers just confirmed, what remains uncertain, and why this particular discovery solved a mystery that had puzzled scientists for more than 100 years. Let's set the scene, because to understand why this discovery is such a big deal, you first need to understand just how strange Betelgeuse already was. Betelgeuse sits in the constellation Orion, marking the hunter's shoulder, a reddish point of light easy to spot even from a light. Polluted city. It lies roughly 640 light-years from Earth, which means the light reaching your eyes tonight actually left the star long before telescopes, before electricity, long before most of what we consider modern history. The star itself is almost impossible to picture using ordinary comparisons. Betelgeuse is a red supergiant. A star so enormous that if you replaced our sun with it, its outer surface would swallow. It's also old, at least in stellar terms. Betelgeuse has already burned through most of the nuclear fuel that keeps a star stable. Scientists widely expect it to end its life in a supernova. An explosion so bright, it could likely be seen in broad daylight from Earth. Nobody knows exactly when that will happen. This could be next year. It could be 100,000 years from now. On a stellar timescale, both answers count as soon. For centuries. One thing about Betelgeuse puzzled astronomers more than almost anything else. Its brightness wasn't steady. It pulsed, faded, and surged in overlapping cycles, some lasting a little over a year, others stretching across roughly 6 years. Layered on top of each other like two clocks ticking at different speeds. That 6-year cycle in particular had no clear explanation. And that unanswered question sat quietly in the background of astronomy for more than 100 years. Part 2 of this story is where the real tension starts, because in recent years, Betelgeuse did something that pushed this old mystery back into the spotlight. Around 2019 and into 2020, Betelgeuse dimmed dramatically, losing a huge portion of its usual brightness in a way nobody had documented before. Skywatchers noticed immediately. Astronomers scrambled to explain it. For a brief, tense moment, some in the public began wondering whether this was it, the beginning of the end for one of the most famous stars in the sky. The explanation turned out to be dramatic, but not in the way the rumors suggested. Using data from NASA's Hubble Space Telescope and several ground observatories, scientists eventually determined that Betelgeuse had experienced something never before documented in a normal star, a colossal ejection of material from its own surface. The star had essentially blown off a massive piece of its outer layer, sending it out into space, where it cooled into a dark, dusty cloud that temporarily blocked some of the star's light from reaching Earth. To put the scale of that event in perspective, scientists estimated the star had thrown off roughly 400 billion times as much material as a typical eruption from our own sun. It was quite literally one of the most violent events ever observed on the surface of an ordinary star. But that wasn't the biggest surprise waiting to be uncovered. That massive eruption didn't just dim the star temporarily. It disrupted something deeper. For more than 200 years, astronomers had reliably tracked Betelgeuse's main pulsing rhythm, a roughly 400-day cycle of brightening and dimming. After the eruption, that rhythm was thrown off entirely. Researchers described the star's interior as behaving almost like a bowl of gelatin that had just been struck, still wobbling and settling long after the original disturbance. Betelgeuse, in other words, hadn't just dimmed. It had been physically shaken, in a way astronomers had never documented in any other star. Part 3 is where the story escalates, because while scientists were busy studying the aftermath of that giant eruption, the older mystery, that separate 6-year brightness cycle, was still sitting there, unsolved. For over a century, researchers had proposed a theory. Perhaps Betelgeuse wasn't alone. Perhaps it had a companion star, a smaller partner orbiting closely enough to interact with the supergiant's enormous outer atmosphere, and that motion was somehow responsible for the longer 6-year pattern in the star's brightness. It was a reasonable idea. But actually proving it was another matter entirely. Betelgeuse is so overwhelmingly bright compared to any potential companion that finding a small partner star sitting right next to it would be like trying to spot a candle flame standing directly beside a lighthouse. Some researchers who had worked on predicting this hypothetical companion doubted anyone would ever actually be able to see it directly. The glare from Betelgeuse itself seemed like it would always be too overwhelming. Then investigators uncovered something nobody expected. In 2024, an astronomer working with a specialized imaging instrument attached to the Gemini North Telescope in Hawaii managed to do exactly what many scientists thought might be impossible, using a technique called speckle imaging, which captures thousands of extremely short exposures to cancel out the blurring caused by Earth's atmosphere. The team spotted a faint point of light sitting almost impossibly close to Betelgeuse, right where the predicted companion star should be. For the first time in over 100 years of speculation, scientists weren't just theorizing about Betelgeuse's companion anymore. They'd actually seen it. Part 4 is where the true turning point of this story arrives, because spotting a faint next to a giant star was only the beginning. The bigger question was what that companion was actually doing, and whether it could really explain the mysterious 6-year brightness cycle. To find out, a team of astronomers turned to NASA's Hubble Space Telescope, combining nearly 8 years of careful observations with additional data from ground-based observatories. What they found finally connected every piece of the puzzle. The companion star wasn't just orbiting near Betelgeuse from a comfortable distance. It was so close that it was actually passing directly through the outer, extended atmosphere of the supergiant itself, plowing through Betelgeuse's outermost layers as it circled around. As this smaller star moved through that gas, it dragged a visible trail behind it. A dense, swirling wake, similar in concept to the way a boat leaves a trail of disturbed water behind it as it cuts across a lake. Except in this case, the water was the outer atmosphere of one of the largest stars known to science, and the boat was an entire companion star. That wake of disturbed gas, expanding and shifting as the companion circled Betelgeuse, was the missing piece. It explained precisely why Betelgeuse's brightness rose and fell on that stubborn 6-year rhythm that had puzzled astronomers since long before anyone had the tools to actually investigate it directly. The truth was even more remarkable once astronomers considered the scale involved. Compared to Betelgeuse, the newly confirmed companion star is almost unimaginably small, closer in size to our own sun than to the monstrous supergiant it orbits. And yet, despite that dramatic size difference, its presence was enough to visibly carve a path through the atmosphere of a star hundreds of times larger than itself. With the discovery confirmed, the research team gave the companion star an official name. They called it Siduhar, honoring cultural traditions connected to Orion, the constellation that has held Betelgeuse in its shoulder for as long as humans have been naming stars. Betelgeuse isn't the only red supergiant known to pulse and dim on unexplained long-term cycles. Other similar stars scattered across the galaxy show the same kind of pattern, and until now, nobody could say for certain whether a hidden companion star might be behind those cycles too. Now, researchers have a confirmed, directly observed example to compare against. That gives them a genuine blueprint for investigating other mysterious giant stars, rather than relying purely on theory and educated guesswork. There's also a broader lesson buried inside this story, one worth sitting with for a moment. It's easy to see a viral headline about Betelgeuse and assume the most dramatic possible explanation, that the star is exploding, that something catastrophic is unfolding right now. The real story turned out to be quieter and in some ways more impressive. A century-old scientific puzzle patiently pursued across generations of astronomers. finally solved not through guesswork but through years of careful, methodical observation using some of the most advanced telescopes humanity has ever built. It's also worth being clear about where the genuine credit belongs. Much of the public conversation around this story has focused on the James Webb Space Telescope, and Webb has absolutely transformed what astronomers can see across the universe since it began operating. But the specific breakthrough behind CERA's discovery came from a different combination of tools. Confirmed astronomy is precise about which instrument deserves credit for which discovery, and this particular mystery was solved by that specific partnership, not by Webb alone. As for the bigger question, still hanging over Betelgeuse, when it will finally go supernova, that piece of the story remains genuinely unresolved. Scientists are confident the event will happen eventually. Nobody, despite what some dramatic headlines might claim, can currently predict exactly when. It remains one of the most closely watched countdowns in modern astronomy, a countdown with no confirmed date, only patient, ongoing observation. So here is the real answer to where this story leaves us. Betelgeuse's strange, decades-old flickering wasn't a warning sign of an imminent explosion. It was the visible signature of a small companion star, quietly carving a path through the outer edges of a giant, exactly as some astronomers had suspected for over 100 years, and exactly as almost nobody thought anyone would ever actually manage to prove. Somewhere out there tonight, roughly 640 years in the past by the time its light reaches us, Betelgeuse keeps pulsing, keeps dimming, keeps quietly hosting the small companion, now finally confirmed to be riding through its outer atmosphere. And somewhere on Earth, astronomers are still watching, waiting for whatever this giant ancient star decides to do next. What do you think it would feel like to witness Betelgeuse's final explosion in our own lifetime? Should have guessed the real explanation involved a hidden companion star instead of something more catastrophic? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And if this story helped you separate the real discovery from the viral headlines, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more true stories hiding in plain sight right there in the night sky.